Well, here we go again. This is Calvin Castine. It's Sunday the 29th of March, 1998. And much to the dismay of many people in the northern part of Clinton County, we are once again looking at the potential of flood, and in far too many cases, actual flooding going on. Our first stop, we thought we'd take a look at the Corbo Creek. And for the time being, the news here is good news. It's not overflowing its banks. Well, actually, it's overflowing its banks a little bit here and there, but not wiping out roads. This is a creek, you may recall, that single-handedly wiped out Route 9, Route 87, and roads in the Cooperville area, virtually isolating people in the town of Champlain back in November of 1986. So this creek, normally a foot or less of water trickling through, played a very important part in that flood of 96. So far here in March of 98, it's flowing briskly, but at this point it is not causing any problems with north-south traffic. And just like that, we have moved now to the La Valley Road between the Ridge Road and Moores. Although there are no barricades on it, it is certainly flooded. We hear a vehicle coming up behind us. I'm not sure if they'll try to pass through here. Having seen so much damage done in 96, we're certainly not going to drive over much standing water today. When we were leaving the Corbo Creek area, we noticed some branches and debris floating down, and of course these high waters are going to relocate a lot of branches and limbs and trees that have fallen into the river due to the ice storm. Hopefully somebody from the Army Corps of Engineers will come in and offer some kind of long-range relief. Otherwise our rivers can certainly end up being in a very dangerous situation with logs and branches sticking up everywhere, a hazard to boaters, and ice moving up and down the river. Mainly down. We're in the village of Champlain now, and this area right here was a very important area back in 96, and of course you're going to hear a lot of references to 96 because that's the one we're going to gauge everything on from here on in. Hopefully that'll be the pacemaker, and we won't have one that'll match or exceed it. But this isn't I'm not sure if the street has a name. It's the extension of Cedar Street is what I would call it, by the old Methodist church. And the Hebert home here was very unceremoniously moved. Since then they've raised the bank up in this area, but the water came around that bend up that way, and instead of making this 90-degree turn, once it found its way over the banks, it kept coming, and this was a very prime area for the floodwaters coming into the village of Champlain back in November of 96. Thus far, the water is flowing briskly. There is a jam up ahead toward Route 11, we've been told. We'll try to make our way in that direction. We're going to take some shots. We've heard that River Street has been evacuated again. It's probably, I'm going to guess, looking at the size of the birds up there and Distance to the water, I'd say 3 to 4 feet from the bridge by Coulombe's store heading north. Or actually heading west and then north later on. That's Main Street in Champlain, Route 9. We're going to wander down Cedar Street down toward Mechanics Inn, formerly Armstrong's Garage, and before that, many years ago, Coonan's Garage. Up on the hill is St. Mary's Academy. Now that basement just got pumped out. Flooded basements has been a story for just about all of us, I think. Pumps are coming out of just about everybody's homes as you make your way up and down the street. The water has got to be a couple of feet deep. Look at that car tire. MRA Computers and Armstrong's Mechanics Inn. This little area off Cedar Street. We're hoping to make our way around here, but obviously we're not going to do that. So we'll walk up to Main Street and see if we can take a look at the bridge from that area. If not, we'll have to come around the other way. They have blocked off Cedar Street at this point so that traffic will not try to make its way through the standing water. The Church Street and Route 9 intersection. No traffic down below. I believe it's called Water Street for some reason. We'll try to take a look at that momentarily. As in years past, there'll be a lot of recorded history of this disaster. A lot more people with good quality cameras now, and this water's going backwards on us here, flowing towards Cedar Street. And of course, as we found out during the ice storm of '96, a lot of camcorders out there. There's the video store. And the barber shop. We would not have been standing here in November of '96 when the water was at its peak. It was about 4 feet up on these buildings. About 4 feet higher than it is right now. And we're starting to get a sprinkle on occasion. These guys are probably getting to be an old hand at this. Boating down Main Street in Champlain. Champlain Fire Department. It's the home of former village superintendent of public works, Pat Perrier. River. River always seems to rise in this area. Here's Ronald and Anna Gooley's home once again. Surrounded by water. A lot of people thought we'd avoid this year. But this, I think, is the result of that 20 plus inches of snow we got all melting at once, with 60, and in yesterday's case 75-degree weather. And all that new fallen snow, along with the snow and ice we'd already accumulated, all trying to melt at once. There's the back of Raymond Bedard's farm supply on the other side of the river. We've made our way now to the other portion of the floodplain on Main Street in Champlain. And they're standing in the St. Mary's Academy driveway. These homes have certainly suffered more than their share of flooding over the years. I think if we look close, we can still see the high water marks on this house. And just because this doesn't yet equal the flood of '96 doesn't mean this isn't a disaster. There's the entryway into the home. So you know it's got to be 2-3 feet high inside the home right there. This is an ice jam. This, we are sure, is a major contributing factor. Across the way is River Street. I think most of these homes have agreed to a buyout, but to the best of my knowledge, that buyout has yet to occur. I think people are still living in the homes where the buyout took place. Now looking down River Street from the Knights of Columbus area. You saw the boat. And as you can see, everybody on the street has been affected by this storm. All too familiar sight to Mr. Roger Coulombe here. Manages a grin as he walks by. Judging from the traffic at this intersection, you wouldn't know it was blocked off. A lot of people wanting to come down and take a look, and scheduled for this morning and still going on as far as we know. Knights of Columbus here in Champlain are having a pancake breakfast, and some people are making their way and trying to enjoy a hot meal on this morning that's a disaster for so many North Country families. We're now on the bridge. The Elm Street Bridge, I guess we'd call it. Standing by the old bank. And now on the other side of the bridge, looking toward the Champlain. A lot of tourists have come to the area. There's no Titanic icebergs, but as these ice chunks float their way down the river, they converge. They want to blast, but this is not a case of solid ice that's going to just break up when you blast. At this point, I think the county highway superintendent is a little stymied as to what's going to be effective. And of course, emergency preparedness director Jim King, I'm sure, is on the scene somewhere. He's probably running in about 8 directions right now. As we stand here, we see more and more ice floating down, and of course there's also things other than ice. We can't spot it in our viewer here. We can see it outside of our viewer, but our black and white viewer, we can't always pick it. There we go. There's a wood, pieces of branches, and all that stuff converging, all rushing to a halt up ahead and causing a back wash into the village of Champlain. We have now left the village of Champlain. We are in Cooperville, at the intersection of the Lakeshore Road and Route 9B. There's so much evidence of the ice storm still to be picked up. The North Country is facing yet another disaster, but thus far, at this end of the river, as it approaches Lake Champlain, things seem to be flowing well at this point. This is Corbeau Creek. You may recall those culverts haven't been put in there. This road was washed out during the flood of '96. Corbeau Creek is a long way from being a problem up at this point. And those new culverts seem to be doing their job quite handily. As we turn toward the Cooperville Bridge, we'll go and get a look at how the water fares at the bridge. This is looking toward the lake on the bridge. The water is high, but at this point I would say there's very little flooding in the Cooperville area. Now on the other side of the bridge, and we're starting to look back toward the village of Champlain here in Cooperville. Looks like a soft ice. I don't think anybody foolish enough to step on that ice would sink right through. And it seems to be covering as far as the eye can see here on the Great Chazy. But again, at this point, on Sunday morning, water does not seem to be a problem in Cooperville. But if that water that's upstream suddenly comes down, it could be a different story here in a couple hours. My intent was to pick up this story in Ellenburg, because if I stop every time I see water, I'm never going to get there, and I have a important basketball game to cover in about 2 hours, so we have to be back here in Champlain for a 1 o'clock basketball game. This is Route 11 by the Creek Road. This, I guess, would be Beaver Creek. Crossing over. And I was very concerned, I have to admit, as I made my way west. Having seen so much in taping that flood of '96, so many roads washed out underneath, I was very concerned as I made my way across here, and I'm not sure I'm looking forward to being back in this same area 2 hours from now. I'm surprised the state is allowing traffic through here. This road was closed last night, but it is open for traffic this morning. As you can see, there's been some washout on the banks of the road, and what we witnessed with backwash back in '96 makes us wonder what's going on underneath. So our intent is to get to Ellenburg, because if we don't get there before the ball game, we'll have trouble getting there after the ball game. There's a mist falling as we stand here in Ellenburg Center. We're at the site where the old dam once stood. This was washed out in November of 1986. And water seems to be flowing just fine through here in Ellenburg Center. Some people thought that this dam letting loose was a major cause of the flooding in Champlain back in '96, but this dam didn't hold that much water that it would have caused that much damage. Is certainly a contributing factor, and I'm sure it caused problems in Ellenburg Corners and Ellenburg Depot when it went through. But by the time it got to Champlain, I'm sure things had evened out a bit. So this is how it looks here on this March 29th in Ellenburg Center. Taking a slight detour on our way to Ellenburg Corners, as we look at the House of Prayer. Our Lady of Adirondacks House of Prayer here on Route 190. A couple of days ago, this place here suffered major flooding as that snow started to melt, and it was rushing through here. We plan on doing a story on the House of Prayer within the next couple of weeks. So maybe at that point we'll talk to the people there about how they fared during that ice melt. But at this point, looks like things are normal at the Our Lady of the Adirondacks House of Prayer on Route 90 in Ellenburg. We have moved to an area that is probably the most renowned area in Ellenburg for flooding. The end, or the corner here of Route 190, where it turns and heads west.
LeBare's store is there. Water is coming very quickly through here. We glanced up at Ranchside Campground area. Sam Marie Trombley's campground area looked to be okay as we took a quick view from our vehicle on our way to here. And water seems to be flowing through here. There does not seem to be any problem at this time. And judging from the snowbanks, I would say they probably have not had any flooding at this point here at the Corners in Ellenburg, at LeBare's store. The McGregor area, from this angle, it would appear that things are moving all right. Of course, we'll have to take a better view and go down to the Canaan Road and see what it looks like from that side. We're here on Route 11 at the moment. Well, things certainly look a little different from this angle. McGregor's Dam here on the Canaan Road, Canaan Hill Road. Water is just barely finding enough room underneath that bridge, hitting a abutment and then making its way through. Those of you who saw our 96 video remember this driveway right here. It was completely washed out in that 96 flood, and looks like they're still suffering some ill effects. I'd like to point out to my friends here in Ellenburg that there's no guardrail right here. Anybody who fell in that water today wouldn't survive, wouldn't have much of a chance of survival. And you can see why there's such a problem downstream where the ice is jammed up. All this water is rushing down that way and nowhere to go. We backtracked just a bit to the Lake Roxanne Road, the LeClaire home, which sits very low here in this scheme of things, very much near River's Edge. Mrs. LeClaire was on Channel 5 News last night, concerned about the flooding. I would guess that there's the town supervisor. I would guess that the waters have receded a little bit at this point. Slightly afternoon on Sunday the 29th. We're now in the town of Moores. Water seems to be coming from a couple of directions here at this bridge. On the Lamberton Road, and this is one of the new bridges. This bridge was destroyed. And again, if you saw our flood tape when the flood of 96, you heard Dick Boris tell us that he was driving up this road in the middle of the night, and they just barely noticed that the bridge was out. They came within feet of driving off the bridge. And the bridge has since been replaced, and the water seems to be flowing through it very nicely. We're at a point in my taping right now where I'm going to have to head for that 6th grade All-Star girls basketball game that's scheduled. It's scheduled to start in 40 minutes. So we have to get there and get our lineups. We wanted to make sure to hit Moores. We didn't want the town supervisor, Jack Dragoon, to say, how come you didn't go to Moores? Well, we made it here, and we hope to continue this story after the basketball game if we're not too tired, and if it's not raining out, we'll be picking up our story again. But for this point, at this point in this water situation, it looks like for right now, Champlain is feeling the brunt of this. The Ellenburg, Irona, Altona, Moores areas got their water yesterday, and today it's going down towards Champlain. The All-Star game is over, and we're on the Angelville Road in the town of Moores. And this is the bridge. Everything appears to be quite calm here, except somebody forgot to tell the river that doesn't belong over there. It has overflowed its banks as it does every year. It is flowing out into the fields. This is in the Gagnon Farm area. I think I just spotted Champy out here. And of course the Gagnon Farm was very well noted in the flood of 1996 because of the fact that they lost so many cattle that were floated away by the raging waters. Well, that's the La Valley Road. We tried 3 different ways to get here and finally came in almost through Scioto to get here. A lot of big ice chunks are out in the field. They'll probably go no further. When the water recedes, they'll stay right there. This, unfortunately, will conclude today's coverage of this flooding in the week before Palm Sunday. We've somehow come up with a severe pain in our left ankle, left heel, I should say. My left heel hurts so much I can hardly walk. So I want to apologize to our friends in Altona and Irona, Scioto, Chazy, West Chazy, and the rest of Moores who are not able to get there, and also Perry's Mills too. I'm sure has a lot of flooding today from what we've heard. It just isn't very practical for me to keep walking around doing this flood coverage. So this will wrap it up. Hopefully it's just a 1 or 2 day story, and this flood water will be receded by the time this is all seen. So this is Calvin Castine reporting to you from the Angelville Road, just a little bit south of the La Valley Road here in the town of Moores.